Welcome to the Play-Based Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Kristen R.B. Peterson, and maybe your new teacher bestie that is here to hype you up, maybe give you a motivating kick in the pants, and teach you all I know about play and childhood. I am here to help you challenge old and outdated practices and inspire you to create a truly developmentally appropriate early childhood environment that fosters creativity, curiosity, and joy in the children that you care for. Let's set the stage for a lifelong love of learning. Let's get going. I have the beautiful Alicia Highland with me today, and we're talking equity and inclusion in early childhood education. Thank you so much for being here. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do and why you're here?
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Yeah. So Alicia Highland. I've been working in education for a little over 10 years now. One of my backgrounds are in environmental education and in early childhood and elementary education.
Okay.
And so, when I'm working in environmental education, I worked with students ages, 0 to actually like probably 70. So I work with a wide range of folks.
Wow, yeah.
My where my passion is working with our youth because they're just so sweet and so wonderful, and it's so exciting to do that.
Absolutely. What state are you located in?
I'm currently in Ohio. I've done most of my work in Washington State in the Seattle area.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really neat. Washington has a great population of like outdoor nature schools.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. And so that's actually the reason I went out to Washington State, is to get my master's in education through the University of Washington and their graduate program that's affiliated with Islandwood, which is a environmental education graduate program. And we work with students throughout the Puget Sound region and do justice-focused, equity-centered environmental education that's aligned to state standards. A week of immersive learning for them, and it's super transformational and transformative and really awesome. And so that really solidified the fact that I really enjoy working with kids, because it is just a little bit cooler than working with adults.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. It is. Okay. So what are you up to what are you doing now?
Yes. So now I'm back in Ohio. I have two very young children. I have a 3-year-old and who's named Theo, and I have a daughter, Penelope. She's turning 1 this weekend. Yeah, it's very exciting.
Names.
Yeah, Theo and Penelope. And so prior to having Theo, I was a kindergarten teacher.
Okay.
And which was super fun. Kindergarten teaching during the pandemic was challenging. Challenging but fun. And so right now I'm at home with them, but wanting to also keep myself immersed in educating for all folks. And just trying to keep myself involved in the community. I've been working on a little side project I call Tiny Green Learning. And it's a tool that I call it a tool that helps families of young children engage in nature-based education.
Amazing.
And so just lessons and inspiration, and then, research-based practices, help them feel comfortable and confident taking their young children outdoors and knowing that it's okay if they play, and it's okay if they make a mess. And it's because it's really good learning that's happening.
Oh my goodness. That is how we came across you, is on Instagram, Tiny Green Learning.
Yeah.
Oh, isn't it? I mean, like, social media can be such a, but it can also like connect people too. So it's kind of cool that way. Cause that's how we found you. Mm-hmm.
I know, it's super cool, because I was just like, well, I think sometimes when you're in your own bubble, or if, when you move to a new place, you're just like, well, how do I find a community that has the same interests and passions that I do? And then it's like, oh wow, there's this huge community there, and it's Instagram allows you to like tap into it, and it's like, well, now I have you, and you're just like the play-based advocate, and I go, I don't have to explain anything to anyone,
right? I know, I get it.
It's real.
You don't.
I go,
No, but I'm really
"Huh."
excited to hear you speak to equity and inclusion in early education. It's an important topic, and I'm glad you're here to do this. So, what I would really love to start with is just have you define just like basics. Can you define would you define equity as?
For me, kind of defining equity is, on a personal individual level, is being able to enter a space and feel comfortable and safe, and able to access all the opportunities that are available in that space,
Mhm.
you know. And so, even though that seems like a very simple way to explain it, that's very hard to achieve in real life.
Yeah,
For everyone to enter the same space, feel comfortable, and have equal access and equal opportunity to grow from their experience. Um,
absolutely.
and so, when you take a step back, that's because there are so many systemic and institutionalized barriers to preventing, not just individuals, but entire populations, from having equal
Yeah,
access.
yeah,
Yeah. So, and I think, inclusion is being able to look at what those systemic and institutionalized barriers are and actively work to remove them so that more people are able to have what is rightfully theirs.
absolutely. Okay, so
Mhm.
what would an equitable early childhood environment look like?
Oh, yeah. That's a great question.
A big question.
No, it is. It's a very big question. It's a very big question. What an equitable early childhood environment would look like. And oh wow, that's a big one. I think for me,
Like
again,
what elements do you think
what
would
elements
need
would
to
it have?
be present?
Yeah, I think the elements that would need to be present again would be, um, you know, I guess working from just the very basic foundation of a program would be that students entering the program have access to all the things that they need just to feel comfortable and safe. So, in my prior experience, that would be, this takes funding and capacity, which is
Yeah.
really, really not what we get in early childhood
Yep,
education.
absolutely.
We don't get the money, we don't get the time or the
No.
bandwidth or anything, but making sure all the students have proper food, have proper clothing, have proper transportation, have proper, learning supports, and that's just at the basic level.
Yeah.
So that because all of our children come into the classroom, whatever that classroom space looks like, with a wide variety of, needs,
Yes.
and that need to be satisfied before they're able to access their,
Yeah.
educational potential. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yes.
Um, and then so, number one, yeah, and number two, I
Yeah.
think, you know, being able to allow the children to be teachers and leaders, and
Mhm.
that is that creating that child-led space makes room for equity
Yeah.
because it takes their interests and their prior knowledge and their culture and puts it at the center of the learning,
Yeah.
and that makes it an inclusive space, I think, automatically, not
Okay.
automatic, you know
Yeah.
and I think also inviting in your community and having folks from the communities that you're trying to serve come in and provide support that maybe you as an educator don't have. You're not part of the demographic or part of the neighborhood, or whatever.
Yes.
You don't
Yes.
have to be the only person who is providing these supports and the mentorship for your students. You have resources all around you that are able to provide an equitable and inclusive learning experience for your kiddos.
Yes.
um so yeah, those are some of the things that I think are important. I don't know
So
if that makes sense.
no, it totally makes sense. So what are some
Yeah.
of like what are some of the reasons or barriers or challenges that, like, why are many spaces not equitable and inclusive?
Oh yeah. Um, so again, I think, again, you want to look at the kind of the systemic and institutionalized level of
Mhm.
why we don't have these inclusive spaces, because we don't have them as adults. And
Yeah.
so we don't have these spaces as adults. And so our children aren't going to have them either. And, because these things are, baked into the way that our systems operate, we have to, get a new recipe. We have to get an entirely new system.
Yeah. I love that.
And
Get a new
so
recipe.
we
We
do.
just need a
Like
new one.
the cake is bad. We need a new
Mhm.
cake.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we need an entirely new cake. And so, um, and I think at the, I don't say, and not I, but the people, the field
Yeah.
recognize that, there is not enough value placed in, you know, children in early childhood education and the elementary education and families. There's not enough support in our society for those individuals and the people who work in those fields. And that's not financial support. People think that we don't do anything serious, but
Right?
we
I
so,
know.
the research shows that ages 0 to 3 years, some of the most crucial
Yes.
years for a child's lifetime development, physically, emotionally, cognitively. So much happens in the first 3 years of your life, but that's when, we get some of our least support, and
Yes.
so we can't have equity if we don't value this space that's, value this learning field.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the greatest barrier. And then that just trickles down to, if you don't value something, you don't fund it
Yep.
appropriately. So, early childhood educators don't get paid well. They
No.
don't, they
No.
have the most, no, they don't get paid well. They need to get burnt out. They don't
Yeah.
have insurance. They're trying to, juggle their own children. And if you don't have support, then you can't attract, highly qualified talent, or you cannot retain that talent.
Yeah.
Not say, hey, come continue to teach for me when you don't make enough money to pay your rent.
Yes, absolutely. I read Texas AEYC just put out a thing on
Mhm.
Instagram saying that the median income of an early childhood educator in Texas is $12 an hour.
Which, what are you supposed to do? How are you
Yeah.
supposed to do?
How are
What?
you supposed to live? Like a
How are you
gallon of
supposed to
milk
live?
is $5.
Yes, yes.
Like,
How are you supposed to live on $12 an hour when you're taking care of the most vulnerable population of people in our country, other than the elderly? But, it's like,
yeah,
it's such important work, but how can you tell somebody it's important if you can't pay them a reasonable wage? you
absolutely.
know? And so I think that is, you know, contributes to all sorts of equity problems.
Yeah.
And then I think, one of the other things is that when, and just in education in general, and I mean, you were very experienced in education, it's just that, we all come from different backgrounds as
Mhm.
experiences, that we all have our own biases and, hidden biases, or,
Yeah.
um, you know, our own prejudices
Yeah.
that we don't recognize or address. And then so when we enter spaces, our classroom or wherever, we bring all of that with us.
Yeah.
And so I think it's so important for us as educator, everyone, you
Yeah.
know everyone has these things. And
Yeah.
so so we have to be able to reflect on them, and then also to take action to, make things better for ourselves
Okay.
and for our students. Yeah.
How do we take action?
Okay. All right.
I'm just getting into it, getting all
Let's
the
do
goods.
it. No, I think for taking action, the place that I feel, hold on, let me rewind. For taking action, educating yourself is the most important part, which is actually the hardest part, because I think
Yeah.
that it involves acknowledging that, there might be a problem. And that's a
Right.
very uncomfortable feeling.
It does make people uncomfortable.
It makes people very uncomfortable.
Mhm.
So, there's lots of really great tools out there for folks to work on implicit bias, so there's that implicit bias test that's out there, which is a great starting point for, I've used this for different trainings for school and for different works, and and you're genuinely surprised. You're like, I don't have that bias.
Yeah.
And then
I've taken it
says
and it's like, whoa.
you go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a
And it's
thing.
like no fault of our own. Like that's just, it's implicit bias. So it's like deep.
It's a
And
deep thing.
you just have to be willing to like work through those things and learn and grow and listen. But it can be uncomfortable. Really can.
Oh,
Hmm.
very uncomfortable, and then being able to lean into that discomfort and
Yeah.
then to say, okay, now what am I going to do? And luckily in education, there's so many great organizations, and they all have there's a wide variety of toolkits. So the National Association for Educators has an entire implicit bias toolkit that you can work with
Okay.
individually or as a team. The Association for the Education of Young Children has an entire toolkit that you can work for
Okay.
especially for early childhood setting.
Yep.
Um, and I think that, what has worked for schools that I've worked in the past is just being willing to have those courageous conversations, but
Mm.
having a framework to have
Yeah.
those conversations in. Because like you mentioned, it's very uncomfortable. People can feel very, triggered and upset when someone
Hmm.
says that's racist or that's
Yeah.
sexist or that's ableist, you know.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
but we do have to hear those words in order to reflect and make a positive environment for our students.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Okay. So what so finding some of those toolkits, and if we
Mm,
can find them, we'll have them in the show notes so that
yeah,
people
yeah,
can click on them, or the implicit bias test.
yeah,
Um
yeah.
what what else can we do? Like on a day-to-day level.
Oh yes. And so I think on a day-to-day level, that's a really good one. Um, I think on a day-to-day level, it's especially if you're working in community, and so being willing to accept the feedback that you get from your colleagues or your peers or from
Mhm.
your students. And
Mm,
so I've had students tell me that I'm being unfair. Or
okay.
I've
Yeah.
had students tell me that, you know, point out something that I'm treating another student more kindly than I treat them. I had one student say, I think you don't like me. And I
Oh.
go, yeah, Miss Alicia,
Oh.
I think you don't like me. And I go, oh, okay. And that's a very hard thing to hear when
Yeah.
you're pouring your whole, heart and soul into these kids every day. And
Yeah.
then and it's like, okay, but she had a point. She was
Yeah.
frustrated. I got frustrated with her frequently because of her behaviors, but I said, well, what is it about her behaviors that are triggering me?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm the adult in this situation, and she's very intuitive. Children pick up on everything. They're
Yeah.
very aware of things. So it's like, well, if what I'm doing, I'm thinking it's not a big deal, but she's very aware of it. So now I need to take a big step back and, try to repair this relationship that I have with her,
Oh my
you know?
goodness.
And so that was a really hard experience.
Yeah.
And then, but I think also that having those hard experiences with our kids or with our families or with our colleagues, and
Yeah.
then doing that repair work. And so you can't just say,
Yeah.
well, they're wrong and I'm right. That's not going to change anything. You
Yeah.
know, being able to do that reflection and say, okay, I made a big mistake.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What can our relationship look like moving forward? I think is really important. And that is something that you can do day to day.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of a meta thing, but more, I guess, like a more tangible tool thing.
I like how
So,
you called it repair work. Like
yeah.
reflection is really repair work.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%.
Mhm.
When, and we do it with our own families, our own children, so why am I not able to extend this to this person who is also my child, they're
Yeah.
with me for so much of their life, and
Yeah.
they take more away from me than just what I'm, teaching them. So I need to model for them what it looks like to try to fix myself. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to like touch on nature-based education for a little bit.
Yes.
Um,
Hmm.
so my friend Kisa Marks, I don't know if you know who
Yes.
Kisa is. Okay, so she has a little course and has talked a little bit with me about before, called it's like something like not just nature play or something, not just woods and white kids.
Hmm.
And I freaking love that title. Um,
Yes.
so talk to me a little bit about what equity and inclusion would look like in a nature-based space.
Oh, yeah. So that's a big, so that's the big one. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, I haven't listened to Kisa's, I haven't seen that training
Yeah.
by her, but I can, she is also someone I was introduced through you.
Yeah.
But and so I can see her face and her voice.
I love her. I love her.
But that is a problem. And even in a place in like Washington State where, people move there across the country to engage in environmental education, and it's still a predominantly white
Yeah.
space with predominant, especially when you get into a nature-based program where it's more widespread there, but it's still only mostly attended by white and affluent children.
Yeah.
um there, it's an issue. And so um you know it, for me and for other folks who work in this space, and some things that we were working at in Islandwood and the zoo and some other organizations I worked at, is, yeah, what does it look like to create an equitable nature-based or environmental education program? And then how do you get people of the community that you want to serve to come into that program? How do
Hmm.
you create the trust and the communication,
Yeah.
and the goodwill, so that they say, okay, I'm going to send my child to a place I might not know, or I might have had very unpleasant experiences with, or a place where I don't think they're going to get as good of an education as in a traditional setting. How do I convince them that, yes, this is good, yes, it's safe, yes, this is maybe even a better option for your child,
Yeah.
a traditional setting? And so again, I think some of that is by going into the community that you're trying to serve, and you know building and having liaisons and all sorts of things, so that you have to work within the community in order to build up the trust and understanding. And then also to provide, like I said, provide students with the things that they might need. Some students may come to the program with the appropriate gear and the appropriate, blah blah blah, yakety schmackety, especially
Yeah.
if you're working rain all day, nature
Yes.
based, outdoor all day. All weather is good weather, you
Yeah.
know. So,
Yes.
but then all weather is not good weather if you
No,
don't have a raincoat, if you don't have
absolutely.
rain boots, if you don't have thermals, and so if you want all children to be in your program, you have to be able to provide for all children, you
Yes.
know. And so, and that's a hard thing to do. And then once your students are actually out in the field with you, or out in your outdoor classroom or nature-based space, you have to give them opportunities to show their expertise. And because, what may seem like common knowledge to someone who's, maybe their parents go hiking every weekend in the Olympics and blah, blah, blah,
The Olympics.
we go to the Olympics every weekend, and we camp and we do this, so, which was a lot of my I worked with all ages of students. One of my students, her parents owned a very or were like a owned one of a very large outdoor gear company. And
Oh,
it's like, okay, your experience is very different than my other student who took the bus to get here.
yeah.
you know
Yeah.
and so how do I create a space where those two students can coexist, and both show that they have expertise and knowledge in this space,
Yeah.
they can both learn from each other. And I think that's a facilitator skill that takes a lot of practice. And so I'm
Absolutely.
kind of I'm all over the place, but
It's
it's
okay.
a lot. There's a lot of work that has to be done.
There
You
is a
know.
lot of work that needs to be done.
Hmm.
Um, what can people, okay, so like people who are in a space like me that does a lot of education virtually to early
Hmm.
childhood educators, like what would your advice be to me on how I can help prioritize like equity and inclusion to to my audience, but also so that those people then can bring it down to their communities and their children that they're working with.
Oh yeah. So like,
I mean,
how
part of
can
it's
you?
probably like inviting amazing people like you onto the podcast.
Thanks. No, yeah, but you know, thank you.
But
How?
what else can we be
Yeah, like
doing?
how can you make it seem important to them? Why does diversity, equity, inclusion matter to someone who really doesn't have to think about it? Does
Yeah.
that type, you know?
Yeah.
If if you're of the, if you're of the majority, then, and if, and, or even if you're of the majority and all of your students also are like are of the majority,
Majority.
then
Yeah.
you think you don't really have to think about equity because
Right.
everybody's white, not to beat
Yes.
around the bush,
Yes.
you know,
Absolutely. I mean,
or white or upper middle class or
yeah.
etc. Um, and I think that that's a really good question. I think that helping folks recognize that it's to the benefit of everyone to have an equitable, inclusive society. And I think one of the some of the reasons why it's important for us to have a society that is reflective of its population and where folks feel comfortable and safe to be their authentic selves, um, is, what how, as an educator, what is your goal as an educator?
Mm.
What kind of, I want to say, person do you want to raise? I'm still in like mom mode.
Yeah. I mean, really,
Person do
that's
you
what
want
we're
to raise?
doing.
But honestly, what kind of person do you want to raise? Like, we're raising these children.
We are.
We are. That's what we do. We help
Yeah.
raise children.
Yeah, we
And
do.
so, what kind of person do you want to raise? Do you want to raise somebody who's empathetic and is a good collaborator, who is able to communicate and able to, recognize the joy and benefit and love of being with others and community? Or do you want to someone who is kind of a poo poo, or is kind of a poopy head,
Yeah, we don't want poopy heads.
We don't want poopy heads anymore. We're over that.
No, we're over poopy heads.
But I think
Oh my gosh, I
making,
love it.
yeah, does that make sense? But making it relatable to, and kind of an aspirational thing. It's like you have so much power as an educator. You have
Yeah.
so much power to shape these children's lives and to create a learning environment that is transformative and magical
Mm,
and and just creates opportunities for them to
yeah,
grow into the person that they can become. So
absolutely.
why not help them understand what diversity, equity, inclusion is, even
Yes.
if it might not be something that they have to think about every day, because they
Mm,
should be thinking about every day.
yeah. Oh,
That
that's
makes sense.
great. That makes
Oh,
perfect sense. And I love that. And I think that you perfectly packaged it up.
mhm.
And that was gold. That was gold.
Oh,
Thank you. Yeah, you did it. That was like a
woo!
mic drop moment. Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, where can people find you? I mean, we kind of said it earlier, but tell them again.
So I'm on Instagram. I'm waving like people can
Like they
see
can see
me.
you. Hmm.
Yeah. I'm on Instagram at Tiny Green Learning. And that's pretty much where I go. I have a TikTok, but sorry, I'm
I
an elder
know.
millennial. I'm not an elder millennial. I'm just a regular millennial, and TikTok is just a little bit too much for me.
TikTok is for me too. I feel like I should be over there, but like also it might get
Yeah.
banned. So then I'm like, why
Yes,
waste my time
why
right
am
now?
I putting all this energy into something that's not going to be here? Because the government
It's
is
a great
going to get
excuse.
rid of it.
We'll just go with that. It's a good
That's
excuse.
what my aunt said. She's like, "Why aren't you on TikTok?" I'm like, "Because the government's going to get rid of it."
Yeah. We
But
hope.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
there's a lot of people who don't hope that. There's a lot of
No,
people who don't hope
yes,
that. So I don't
yeah,
hope that for you, but
yeah.
just selfishly, it's
It's
not,
so
I don't want to have to learn it.
because I can't. It's too much. It's
A
like a
lot.
lot. It's a lot to do TikTok. So, but yeah, you can find me on Instagram at
Amazing. Okay. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the work that you're doing in education. I appreciate the knowledge that you shared with us today. And I hope that people get a lot of gold moments like I did. So thank you so much for being here and taking the time for this. I appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. This is so much fun.
Oh,
I
I'm glad
love
you
it.
had fun on your first
Yeah,
podcast
I
experience.
know. Good.
Woohoo!
I
Yeah,
do.
I'm
I
a,
go, this is
this is a good
tremendous.
podcast to start out on because it's not very stodgy and stuffy. It's more relaxed and playful.
I did. I like listen to a few and I go, oh, okay, I can get the flow of this. Like I can do
Yeah.
this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Bye bye, everybody. If you liked what you heard today, share this podcast with your coworkers, admin, or maybe even your partner. And I love getting 5-star reviews so more people can embrace play. Hit follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Or connect with me on Instagram or my website, KristenRBPeterson.com. Until next time.